very excited about this opportunity to share my passion for cultivating healthy communities through the practice of spiritual agroecology, a faith-based initiative for promoting unity, justice, local sustainable agriculture, and environmental stewardship. To illustrate the power of a faith movement, I have in my hand a kernel of corn. Can you hear the corn speaking this morning? What would it say? It's a question: how much can this kernel produce? Now, at the conclusion of my talk, I'm going to give you the answer, or you can try to count all of the seeds that are contained in that jar. That is the answer. This is not a theory for me, but a life commitment. 11 years ago, after having pastored a local congregation for many years, I felt a need to redirect my time, focus, and resources towards the needs of the community. Our church had land that was available. A decision was made to plant an organic farm and to start a missionary farm intern training program. Shortly thereafter, a partnership was formed with a local food pantry. It's called Lake Cares, and it serves many of the communities found here in Lake County. During these years, many people have come to volunteer. Many hours of community service and volunteer service has been given to help grow the produce. Thousands of pounds of food has been given free of charge to people of our communities with the greatest need. We've also been blessed with people coming from around the world and across the United States to serve as farm interns. They have helped with every aspect of growing the food and serving our local community. I think of one young man by the name of Kenneth. He's a student in Michigan studying organic agriculture. His family owned a farm in Mississippi. I can only imagine the hardships that they must have faced farming at that time. The farm is now no longer in operation, but Kenneth's plan is to return to Mississippi and open that farm again. I'm excited about so many young people with a passion for sustainability and environmental stewardship. In my Christian faith tradition, agriculture is often used as a means of communicating spiritual truths. It begins with a story of a garden that God planted. He placed man there to care for the garden, and during the cool of the day, God would come and walk in the garden. There are three principles I learned from this story. One, God set an example for us by planting a garden. Two, we have a responsibility to take care of that which God has created. And three, the garden is a place of spiritual encounter, a place for reflection and prayer. This is confirmed in the New Testament. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, he went to a garden there to pray, and prayed what I consider to be the most intense prayer of the Bible, when he cried out, "Father, if there's any other way for the redemption of humanity, let this cup pass from me. But not my will be done, but the will of the Father." Judas came that night with soldiers to make the arrest. They were looking for a place to find Jesus without crowds surrounding him. How did Judas know that Jesus would be in that garden on that night? And the answer was, Jesus went there frequently with the disciples to pray. The garden is a place to encounter God and to find spiritual insights. Also, through history, agriculture and land ownership at times has been used in an oppressive manner. But in the Old Testament, the Jewish farmers were commanded, when they harvested their fields, to leave behind part of the crops. This was for the poor of the community to be able to come and gather for themselves. It was called gleaning. In addition to this, the four corners of the field were not to be harvested. They were to be left entirely for helping the poor. There were three classifications of people who were most vulnerable to poverty. They were the widows, the orphans, and the foreigners. I love the thought that farming can be used to extend generous justice to the community. Speaking on the subject of environmental stewardship, my thoughts go back to my childhood growing up here in Central Florida. I remember a time when there was a lot of agriculture, the citrus industry being the largest. I remember orange groves spread over the hills as far as your eye could see. We would see the buses carrying the workers to harvest the fruit. We would see the trucks carrying the citrus to the plants to be processed. There was the smell of the oranges in the air. To me, it was a wonderful thing. My mother's family owned citrus groves and managed packing houses. I had a lot of opportunity as a child to play in the orange groves. It was not until later that I realized there was some devastation to our environment that was occurring, and many people's health was being placed at risk. The groves were being sprayed with a type of equipment that was very powerful. It was pulled by a tractor, this large sprayer, and they would go down through the rows of citrus trees, and the force of the spray was so strong, it would shake the trees, and the spray would be blown high into the air. I was in the orange grove playing many times when this was happening. I saw workers in the groves during those times. You could smell the spray in the air. Matter of fact, the force of the spray was so strong, it would drift into our neighborhoods. It was not until my teenage years that I saw a change, and I began to see signs placed around the perimeters of the orange grove when they were being sprayed, warning people not to enter. And for the first time, it dawned on me, hey, there might be a problem with what's being done. I also have another memory visiting my grandparents who lived in Winter Garden along the shores of Lake Apopka, which is classified as the number 5 largest lake in the state, and also became classified as the most polluted large lake of the state. My father told me that when he was a child, this lake was crystal clear. There was an abundance of waterfowl and so many fish in the lake. I never saw the lake like that. I only remember it being a pea green color, and at times there being the terrible smell of massive fish kills on the lake. If you know a little bit of the history, in the early 40s, a levee was built and the marshes were drained. They were turned into farmland. We called them muck farms. They were used for vegetable production. During the early 40s, they began to use pesticides. Every year, those waters would be pumped from the farm into the lake. In the 40s, there was a massive algae bloom in Lake Apopka. Part of the problem was not only Lake Apopka, this is the headwaters of a chain of lakes, which we call the Harris Chain of Lakes, that continues on into the Ocklawaha River Basin. There were not only muck farms along Lake Apopka, but also around other lakes and along the Ocklawaha River. In 1980, there was a tower chemical spill into Lake Apopka. Lake Apopka was designated a super site fund for cleanup. And a process began of appropriating the land and returning it again to marshes. What they learned was that marshes helped to filter the water from the lake. Now, 30 years later, we're beginning to see an improvement in our waterway. It's better, it's cost a lot of money, but it should have never happened. On the subject of sustainability, I agree with the statement by the United Nations. Sustainability is about meeting our present needs without damaging the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Mahatma Gandhi says, "The earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed." Now, I would like to give you the answer concerning the corn. There's great potential in a kernel of corn. One kernel of corn can produce one stalk of corn. On the average, one stalk of corn will produce 2 ears of corn. Now, those ears of corn vary in size. They can have anywhere from 500 to 1,200 kernels of corn. On the average, 800 kernels of corn on an ear of corn, times 2 is 1,600 kernels of corn. And you do believe me, I counted every kernel in that jar. That's in the first planting. If you took all of those kernels of corn and planted them again, that would be 1,600 times 1,600, or 2,560,000 kernels of corn. If we were to go to the third planting, I think I'm going to call a timeout. It's a lot. There is such potential in faith and sustainability. I want to close today by challenging you to plant seeds of hope and change in the communities where you live. Thank you.